Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1592 AN. Today's date is June 14th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Breaking Down the Plan to Control the Narrative When the Economy Collapses. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've talked about the crypto market, the blockchain, in other reports, and what has come out is that the SEC has seemingly confirmed that Ethereum trades are not subject to federal security laws. And basically what they're saying, and the reason why they're telling us that this is not subject to federal security laws, is because Ethereum, the Ethereum network, it is decentralized. It's a decentralized structure. And they're saying their current offers and sales of Ether are not security transactions. And we can see right now, if it's Ethereum that is not a security, then other cryptocurrencies are going to fall into the same exact category. Very interesting. And the key here, of course, is being that Ether is decentralized. This would maybe suggest that Bitcoin or Litecoin and the rest are not securities even, given that they're decentralized. Actually, it's all decentralized. And the SEC went on to say that applying security laws to Ether adds little value. And basically the SEC chairman, Jay Clayton, had said that the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are not securities, though the agency had not definitively named any other coins that would be deemed currency and not securities. And we might be heading in that direction right now. And if you want to know more on how to trade through this volatile market of cryptocurrencies, or you just want to learn about cryptocurrencies, you can go to the x22reportschool.com. You can learn about cryptocurrencies, or you can enter the trading room and you can watch traders actually trade instead of just holding cryptocurrencies and learn how to trade. And again, it will bring you to a website. It will explain it all. And if you want to find out where the link is, it's at the bottom of the video or on the x22report.com site. Now, it looks like Rolls-Royce, they're going to be cutting around 4,600 jobs, and it looks like they're saying they're going to restructure, they're going to try to make the company more profitable, and we're seeing a lot of companies where they're laying off a huge amount of employees right now, and they're all talking about restructuring. They're saying, oh, we need to cut this and cut that. And what that tells me is that these companies, they're not profitable right now. Something is going on, and we know what's going on in the economy. It is breaking down. Now, what we need to understand right now is that there's a huge plan going on to control the narrative as this breaks down. Now, how do you do this? You're not just going to come out and say, hey, the economy's falling apart, everyone run to the hills, I don't know what else we're going to do. What you need to do is you need to use the system that they've been using. And I'm talking about the central bank, the establishment, and they've been modifying these statistics for a very long time. You don't want to stop that. You want to continue on with this, because remember, this economy is a central bank economy. So this is what Trump has been doing, and the Patriots, they've been continuing on with this illusion. Now, the corporate media, they're having a very difficult time because they don't want to give credit to Trump. They rather give it to Obama, and they don't want to say the economy's doing poorly just yet because they're trying to give credit to Obama, and they don't want to give it to Trump. And they're going back and forth, and they're trying to figure out how to do this. But the plan is right now it's to get this illusion moving forward to make everyone believe that the economy is doing well. When everything starts to go south, all you need to do is say, okay, why did this whole thing go south here? Who's to blame? What happened? Because we've had the lowest unemployment we've ever seen. Corporations are making profits. GDP numbers are good. Let's see, who's controlling the economy? Oh, right, the central bank. What did they do? Why all of a sudden did the economy fail? Was it because they were raising interest rates? Were they not managing the economy well? And we can see with continuous jobless claims, right now, they are the lowest they've ever been in 45 years. We're at 1973 numbers right now. There are less than 1.7 million Americans claiming jobless benefits. Now, of course, this is all manipulated to make you think and believe that everything is great. Now, during this process where you're going to bring the whole system down, and you don't want to make it painful for a lot of people. It's going to still be painful. We're going to go through a transition. Remember, the central bankers, they don't care when it comes down. They don't care who they hurt. They would bring it down hard and fast. They don't care. The establishment does not care whatsoever. And what they've done in the past is that they've put a lot of people on government programs because they wanted everyone dependent on government programs. And when the whole system came down, everyone would be looking to the government. Well, what's been happening is that food stamp usage in America has fallen 7.8% since Trump was elected. Many people are being pushed off the government support. So fewer Americans are relying on government food handouts. Well, that's very interesting because you can't have the people relying on the government when the system falls apart because the government is not going to be able to support them. So you might as well have people right now try to figure out how to get along by themselves and figure out how to do this, because think about this. If the system completely crashes and it falls apart and everyone's looking towards the government, what is the government going to do? Nothing. Then you're going to have riots and people screaming and yelling at the government because they're not being helped. If people are not relying on the government and you're trying to reduce this number because you know a crash is coming, well, they're not going to blame the government. And this is what is happening right now. Now remember, we have the illusion being pumped up to control the narrative because they have to blame someone for this, and it's going to be most likely the central banks. And they need to get everyone off of government support. Now, this is not an easy task. It's not good for many people, but we're heading towards a major collapse scenario. And everything has to be put into place to weather the storm as best as possible. Remember, the central bank, the establishment, they've been running this economy for a very long time. Their plan was to get everyone dependent on government. And this is why Obama always came out that it wasn't you who built the business, it was really the government. And they were trying to convince people of this. And now the opposite is happening. But during this gigantic illusionary push to make the economy look great, they're going to be putting out statistics like we've never seen before, and we're seeing a lot of it. I mean, if we look at retail growth, now we know retail is not doing well. And I know there's headlines out there saying retail sales surge in May, the biggest jump that we've seen in a very long time. And we also need to understand is that there are many stores that have closed. Fuel prices have gone up, and we've seen something called inflation. And inflation, well, that is what is pushing these numbers up. This is how we can explain all this. As the dollar loses value, people have to use more dollars to pay for the same exact stuff. So when we look at this, we can see that prices are moving up. If we look at the CPI, prices are moving up. It's called inflation, which means the dollar value is declining. So total retail sales, including food services such as restaurants, surged by 5.9% in May from a year ago. This is from the Commerce Department, which they reported all of this morning. Retail sales without food services jumped 6% to $443 billion, excluding motor vehicle and parts. Retail sales jumped 6.4% to $399 billion. I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like everything's going splendidly well. And the report also says there's very low employment. Rising wages and tax cuts are prodding Americans to spend. Well, let's look at this. Inflation, measured by the Consumer Price Index, shed some light on what would happen in retail sales today. CPI rose 2.8% in May, the fastest year over year since February 2012. Conversely, the purchasing power of the dollar dropped 2.93% in May. So inflation up 2.8%, the purchasing power of the dollar down 2.93%. And this is all from a year ago. This is the fastest drop since November 2011. The loss of purchasing power of the dollar is unevenly distributed over various products. Beyond retail sales, the purchasing power of the dollar has essentially collapsed when it comes to buying a home in some of the hot housing markets in the U.S. For retail products, the decline in purchasing power of the dollar also varies. For example, in May, it took 21.8% more dollars to buy the same amount of gasoline as a year ago. But retail sales of gasoline rose by 17.7% over the same period. In other categories, the price increase were much smaller. So when we look at all this, consumers lost purchasing power. It takes more dollars to purchase the same item a year ago. Wages got wiped out by eroding purchasing power of the dollar. So wages are declining, and the purchasing power of the dollar is declining at the same time. And over the 12 months, when we look at the purchasing power of the dollar, it has dropped considerably. I mean, if we go back prior to 2008, it's like 2007, 2006, the dollar index was around 50. We're down to almost 39.5. It has dropped considerably, and it's not getting better. We also see bubbles in the economy all over the place. We see it in housing, we see it in stocks. And when we look at the graph, we can see that housing bubble number 2, which we're in right now, because the first housing bubble was back in 2005, 6, 7, 8. And if we look at the housing bubble today, and we're looking at 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, we just surpassed the housing bubble number 1. We're much, much higher than that bubble. If we look at the S&P 500 stock index, well, once again, we are much higher than we were back in 2008 when it was bubble back then. I mean, the situation is not getting better. We're looking at all these bubbles, and you know what happens with bubbles. They pop. We can pretend that there's no bubbles, that there's nothing here, but we've seen this in the past. Every time it reaches a certain point, the whole thing just comes down. And we know that this is a problem with bubbles. The other problem with bubbles is that we've become dependent on them as props holding up a rotten, corrupt status quo. Since the economy can no longer generate sufficient prosperity to go around via actual increases in productivity and efficiency, those skimming most of the gains rely on the wealth effect, generated by expanding asset bubbles to create a dreamy illusion of prosperity. And where does all this go? All those people that own assets, it goes up to where? The top 1%. The other 99% of the people, they're left out in the cold. And this is what we're seeing right now. So breaking down this entire plan, it's to keep the illusion alive, make everyone think that the economy is doing well, and when everything starts to fall apart, well, we had a great economy. What did the central bank do to destroy this? What did they do? Let's see, they raised interest rates. We don't know what they're doing with the currency they're creating, where the currency is going. We have no clue. Maybe we need to find out. And you can have the public at this point, if the government leads in this direction, to say we should audit the central bank because they're managing our economy. They just destroyed the economy when the economy was doing very, very well. Remember, Obama handed a very strong economy off to Trump. And he's continuing this as we move forward. And he's preparing everything for this major transition. This is what is happening right now. This is why we see the tax cuts, the tariffs. All of this is to prop up the system for a little bit longer, get everything aligned, and get prepared for a transition. And that's where this economy is headed. And at the same time, control the narrative and blame this on the central bank. In the past, the central bank, they blamed it on everybody else because they control the narrative. If we go back to 1971, who did they blame? Why did we have to come off the gold standard? They blamed speculators. Who are these speculators? They blamed other countries. And this is why we had to come off the gold standard. This is why the central bank had to push their agenda, because they designed a new system back then. Come off the gold standard, go into the petrodollar. How do we explain this? We just can't come out and say we're going to come off the gold standard. They had to make some type of scenario to convince the people that speculators were hurting the economy. And we needed to come off the gold standard to stop them. No, that's not what was happening. They needed that story, this fake news story, to move us to the petrodollar system. And that's what happened. Now, what are we doing? We're keeping the illusion alive. This is the illusion that the establishment, the central banks, have all set up. We're using what they have used in the past. And now, as the economy falls apart, you can see the White House is going to come out saying we had a very strong economy, and the central banks did something. The Fed did something. And they basically brought down the economy. We need to find out what they're doing. And guess what? Trump will support an audit bill. The people will rally around all of this and say we need to find out what the central bank is doing. All they have to do is make a case for it. And they'll be screaming and yelling, just like they made the case for the central bank to bail out all these corporations and banks. They made the people say, yes, we need a bailout. Congress, we need a bailout. This was the central bank's plan. This was the establishment plan. Well, now it's going to be done in reverse. This is the plan to take down the system, and we're watching it unfold right in front of us. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.